Hello and welcome to today's lesson on data management. We're looking today at the deletion of communications. And this is part of our discussion around data privacy and the features inside Sage CRM that allow organizations to be able to meet their obligations according to local data privacy laws, such as the GDPR in Europe, GDPR UK in the UK, and I think acts like the Californian Public Protection Act. Here we are looking at this particular lesson at a continuation of the discussion really on the right to be forgotten, or the right of erasure. So we're going to be looking at how we can delete communications and how, as a wider discussion of that, how the process of deleting communications is part of the process of removing data that no longer should be retained inside the system. And we'll be looking at the practicalities of that and how that's implemented inside Sage CRM. So we know that there are a set of features within Sage CRM which govern the different rights around the management of consent, the question of data anonymization. Now we're looking at the deletion of communications, but we'll also be looking in the next lessons at the idea of the deletion of documents and the way in which we can understand how data is shared with other systems. Well, if we are looking at that, well, we need to start to understand really the challenge when it comes to the removal of data. And as part of this challenge, we're going to be looking at why really the last lesson that we had, which was about the anonymization, is actually a preferred approach for most of the tasks of removal of data. Now, to start to understand really the challenge of deletion, we should actually go ahead and start that process, and we'll see all about that. Now, here I've switched into Sage CRM. I'm going to log on as the system administrator. And once I'm in the system administrator screen, I can go off and start to look for a company. And here you can see I've switched over to looking at Eurolandia. Now, this is the demo data within Sage CRM. And if you're familiar with the demo data of Sage CRM, then you'll know that Eurolandia has a couple of contacts within inside its persons tab. It's got, as a company, it's got data within the cases and opportunities. And if I now want to start the process of deleting, I click on the change. Of course, you can only start to delete data if you have those rights on, as far as your security profile is concerned, to delete data. And here I'm going to delete the data and I'm going to confirm my delete. Only I don't, because this record exists within inside a set of relationships. You can see immediately this company is telling me it's got communications, opportunities, it has cases, it has quotes, it has data dependencies associated with it. And so something like a company record is directly referenced by a whole host of child tables. And just in our example that we've looked at, there is, in fact, there's the idea of the address table and it's linked to the address link table, the case table, the communication link table, and then there's the email table, the lead table, the library table. There's even a marketing table, an opportunity table, a person table, and the person link table. There's also the phone numbers, and if in turn we think about all of the subsidiary links that come from that, Well, if you've got opportunities, you've got opportunity progress records, you've got case progress records, you've got potentially solutions that are linked to the opportunity, to the cases that the person was working on or that company was associated with. There's all opportunity history and a whole host of other relationships, which if you would just delete this company, you punch a hole directly into. So that's quotes, quote items. If you've got whole key attributes even and workflow, and that's even not going on to the idea that there may be custom tables associated with this, or even some of the marketing features like call lists and call list tracker tables, which are marking the interactions. Trying to delete a company or a record like this can create more problems than it would solve in terms of the need to meet a person's need to have their data erased. Now, I started off with the company, but you can start to understand that this could also be a person record, and what goes for the company goes for the person as well. They exist in a set of relationships which could be immensely problematic if we were just to delete straight away. Now, that doesn't stop us deleting things. So, for example, if we have created a record and we decide that we need to release it, we need to get rid of it, then, of course, that delete right exists. In the example I was just showing you, you'd have to have gone through and deleted the opportunities or changed somehow the opportunities and the cases, all of that data away from the company that you wanted to delete or the person that you wanted to delete. The idea of removal of data raises the question of referential integrity. And if I was just to punch out a hole and remove a company, I'd have had all of these orphaned records potentially sitting in the system, not linked to anything, when in reality an opportunity always has to be linked to the parental record, whether that's the person or whether that's a company. Now, this all means that in terms of the removal of data, we have the option of, in any data system, of hard delete versus soft delete. So these are the two options that you have in a data system for the removal of data from a database, or rather these are to do with the removal of the data from access to users. And understanding these concepts is also crucial in the context of data privacy compliance. Now, if we went down the route that when you hit the delete button inside Sage CRM, and that record was actually definitely permanently removed from the database so that it was unrecoverable, then it would create a potential problem for us in that we wouldn't be able to retrieve it if there was a question about the integrity of the data. And it would raise questions as well around the audit trails of information. Now, in the case of a soft delete, the record is not actually physically removed from the database table. What happens is that there is a flag or a marker set. In the case of Sage CRM, we're going to see that there is a specific field in the tables, which is used to tell the underlying mechanism that produces the data to the screens, that data should be suppressed and should not be shown. So soft deletion is you're not physically removing anything, you're just using a flag, and it means that you can't see that. Now, Sage CRM is anxious about, its design is anxious about the nature of data recovery and accidentally or malicious removal of data. So it prefers to use soft deletion. But this can pose data privacy risks if the data is not securely stored or recovery procedures are not properly implemented. There is a possibility, if somebody has asked for their data to be deleted, for unauthorized access or disclosure, whereas hard deletion goes ahead and actually removes that data completely. And there's no chance of unauthorized access because there is no chance of access to that data. And so it is with a hard delete, you're absolutely complying with data privacy laws. Now, this has an implication for us when we're thinking about the question about the deletion of, say, opportunities for a company or for any data within the context of any data within the context of Sage CRM. So if I start off here, I'm looking at Acacia, and you can see that I'm looking at two records that are available to me underneath this company, these two opportunity records. If I go into one of these, we can see that this is a normal opportunity record. It's linked to our it's linked to Acacia, and we can go ahead and we can now go ahead and delete that. So I'm going to click change, and I can hit the delete button here, and I can confirm my deletion, and I'm returned back to the company list of opportunities, so the opportunity list. Now that's gone, and it's as good as gone. For all intents and purposes, you will not be able to see this opportunity. It's gone from the interface, but it's not gone from the database. This list is based on a view, and if we switch over as a system administrator into the administration area and drill down into the customization area and then into opportunities, I can look at the views, and I happen to know that the opportunity list uses a view here called the opportunity list, or the list opportunity. And if we have a look at this and zoom in, you can see here that whatever the select is going on, you'll notice that there is a particular predicate that is used in the where clause, which is where oppo underscore deleted is not. So any of the structures within the interface make use of the idea that that record is suppressed because it is marked as deleted. But it raises the question that somebody who has administrative rights could create a new view that might be used for a report which neglects to include the opportunity deleted, and so would raise the question of being able to see data that would otherwise be gone. It can come back. So again, how does that affect us? Well, if I switch over into this screen, we can start to think about how we worked with data, with a group of data, and look at the idea of data anonymization. Here you can see that I have been able to obliterate certain of the personal identifying information or personally identifiable data for a data subject by using this idea of the mass update, and that obliterates the data by placing a meaningless token in that data field. So literally, as you can see here, XXXX has marked out those fields of first name, last name, and email address. That's a very secure and absolute way of removing data that needs to go within the system. If we look at one of those items, we can see that we're looking at one of the leads. And if you look to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that the fields are marked out. They are blanked out with the XXXX. And that's the personal identifying information that has been removed, but the non-personal information remains. Now that's okay to keep that, because this is to do with storing information that is not associated with a natural person. You can store company information almost indefinitely, because that's not a natural person. It's a concept of only a person in law, not something that is a real human being. And if I look to now this particular lead, this happens to be a lead record. This lead has a set of communication records with it. Now, communication records can be a complication for data privacy because they contain unstructured data that may contain personal identifying information. If you think about the amount of information that you might carelessly add into the notes of a meeting or the transcript of a phone conversation, there could be a lot of information that provides names, relationships, not just for the person, but other people within an organization, that you now need to remove because of the requirements of the right of erasure. And that is a real problem, because if you think about the nature of technology which is available now, such as the large language models and the rise of artificial intelligence, those models can also be used to look at corporate data like databases in an unstructured format and derive information from all of the conversations. And of course, data becomes PII, personally identifiable information, if it is combined to be able to provide all of the necessary information to uniquely identify or distinctively identify a natural person as the data subject. So we have to get rid of communications which we no longer should be storing. So we have, next to the communications tab in the context of leads and persons. So this is something linked to communications for leads and persons, because they are the natural persons that we're interested in. This delete button delete communication button appears if you have enabled mass operations. So we looked at that earlier in the sequence of lessons, and the user has to be either a system administrator to see this button if it's enabled within the system, or they have to be an info manager with user rights. Well, if I click this, it's going to warn me about the deletion of data, and so I can continue to delete and you'll see that it's removed the data and returned to this screen. So it's gone. But has it? Because this only carries out a soft delete. So this particular feature, and you need to know that it's a soft delete in order to ensure that you then are able to do the next step. So this example this creates a situation similar to the idea of the backup that we talked about yesterday in data around the idea of data anonymization. If you have got a backup of that data, and because of the unique identifier, that data can be restored. Here, because you have a unique identifier, because the data still exists in the system and only the flag is available, only the flag is set, that flag can be unset, or a report can be created on a view that does not look for it, and the data would appear again. So it's a soft delete. You have to know that so you can then take the next steps, which would be the hard deletion within the database. Now, there is something else that we can do. If I come into the administration area, I can go elsewhere within our data management to look at the idea of hard deletion of communications. So you can see that this has come into administration, data management, hard delete of communications, and I can now provide a date in here, and I've also confirmed that I've taken a backup of my database. That, by the way, it contains its own certain irony. If you are wanting to remove all communications after a certain period of time, you will have to say that you're satisfied in terms of your backup. Now, it might be that your business takes a view that you don't retain data more than 6 years because that's well beyond the particular legislation that you need for keeping company records as far as the law is concerned, or however that happens. Now, this is chiefly a feature for data for managing the performance of your system, but it's still important to understand that this is how we can absolutely remove data associated with here a date time, so it's old data, and get rid of it. So I can now confirm that. It's going to warn me how many records or that records are going to be deleted, and it performs a hard delete on the communication records. This means the records get permanently deleted from the Sage CRM database, and the only way to recover them then is to restore the database from a backup. And of course, the backup creates its own issues around GDPR as well. I was talking about this to a colleague earlier on today, looking at the idea that you have to think for your backup processes of if you have a backup policy, how many months do you keep of your backups? So how many restore points do you have before you accept the fact that some data will just go? Because if you are keeping a 3-month backlog of your data, backups of your data, then after 3 months, then your policy would be that actually by that time now, everything has gone. You don't need to restore, and you can say goodbye to the old data. So we've understood, hopefully, that the chief driver in terms of the design philosophy of Sage CRM is the anxiety around referential integrity and making sure that data is safe in terms of its relationship to one another. And that raises the reason why that, first of all, the obliteration of data using the idea of the mass update to blank out fields or to overwrite them with meaningless dummy characters is the preferred mechanism to the deletion of data. But where you are going to delete data, it prefers the idea of a soft delete, which then a subsequent behind the scenes deletion within the database. Of course, you have this data implications, data privacy implications, because you need to make sure that you understand that where data is only soft deleted, it can come back, and where data is hard deleted, you'll never get it back. And you'll exist though within that tension because you will have taken backups of the data, and that has to be considered as part of your overall management of data privacy. So we've looked now at the question of data anonymization. Well, we've looked at the whole question of the management of personal data and the obligations that are placed on us by data privacy legislation, the question of the management of consent, data anonymization, the deletion of communications, the deletion of documents, and then we're going to be looking next, as I said, at flagging and understanding where that data flows to. I am not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice. You remain, or every business remains, solely responsible for understanding and complying with all of the applicable data protection laws and regulations in your jurisdiction. But all this is building, I hope, to demonstrate that Sage CRM provides you with a set of tools that allow you to meet those obligations. We're going to be looking next at the deletion of documents and management of documents, and then looking at the flagging of data that is shared with other systems. Let's see if anyone has got any questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. I hope you found today's lesson useful. We're going to continue our discussion around data next week. Until then, thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.